The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor,
Greetings, Bitcoiners.
Victoria Jones from Satoshi's Page,
How are you doing?
and I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to issue one. Issue one. The PayPal stablecoin is bigger news than any Bitcoin ETF. Yes, PayPal is launching their own stablecoin, and it's an ERC20 token on the Ethereum network backed by Paxos. The stablecoin would allow PayPal users to trade in and out of a dollar-backed stablecoin that will stay at $1. No profit for them, but lots of profit for PayPal and Paxos as people pay to change in and out of the stablecoin. Dan Eve, what do you think about the PayPal stablecoin?
It seems like a very sensible move for them, right? They're a very leading innovative company when it comes to sort of online payments. They've really made a stand in there and made a reputation from that. The customers, as they point out, that there's 4%, I think it is, for the merchant fees, which is quite a lot, and they can actually bring that down by using a stable coin. They haven't mentioned whether it's on Ethereum at the moment. They haven't mentioned whether they're going to branch out to other chains. But there have been people that have pointed out that it's got a freeze and wipe function on there, so they can literally just freeze your account and then wipe freeze accounts and just take your money from you. So they're putting the centralization back in decentralization. By doing so, then they're not following kind of the four rules of crypto, right? Your coins, your keys, because you can have your private keys and you can have 100 million of Pi USD or whatever it's called, the PayPal stable coin in there. But they can just freeze and wipe, and then you may have your keys, but they're the lock is useless because they've backdoored the smart contract. But that said, it's going to be a big thing for general international remittances from PayPal's perspective. They've got such a huge corner of the market. I know a lot of freelancers that I've worked with over the last couple of years insist on being paid, via PayPal, because it's just more difficult switching, doing international banking. So PayPal is just a nice, easy option for them. So for a lot of other people that I also know paid in stables who kind of cash out via like Coinbase or something else like that, and then have to go to PayPal and then back to their bank, this removes a step for them because they can just get paid in Pi USD and then go straight into their bank account. So it reduces friction for a lot of people. But of course, you've got the same issue that you have with it being a centralized entity, and we've seen a lot of these accounts recently, and even in the UK, whether you like him or not, he's highlighted an issue of accounts being frozen by banks and just killed, just like PayPal have and all sorts have done in the past, which is Nigel Farage. So PayPal will still have the upper hand to be able to do that, the old freeze and wipe, which also, it sounds just dirty, doesn't it? Freeze and wipe. They can just freeze and wipe you. But yeah, in terms of general remittances, it's going to add an extra layer reduce friction for people that are already being paid by PayPal in cryptocurrency, and also it unleashes a bit more of an outreach to people that aren't into crypto, so they can get into crypto a bit easier. They can buy Bitcoin with PayPal, as they've done for a while now. They can trade in and out of it into USD, as people like to do, and to tackle the bear markets and bull markets. So opens a lot of doors, but not your keys, not your coins. Even if they are your keys, they may not be your coins or PayPal, because they can freeze and wipe.
Freeze and wipe sounds like a classic PayPal feature. I don't think I know anybody that hasn't had their PayPal account frozen before, and if it goes really badly, wiped. I remember when I tried to sell some Bitcoin on eBay back in the day, and of course, PayPal, the person I sent it to, they were hacked, and so they got the Bitcoin and they got the refund, and I ended up with nothing. So thanks again, PayPal. They didn't freeze my account that time, but a pretty old account on there. I've been doing eBay a long time. I do think it's amazing how far we've come with PayPal. Originally, they had no crypto. They said they didn't want any crypto. And even going back to the Palm Pilot when PayPal should have been crypto and you could pay your friend, and it just got more and more expensive. And pretty soon you'd never pay your friend. You just used it for eBay. And now they have lots of crypto and they're even making their own crypto. So, as much as people don't like PayPal, it's easy, it's convenient, and now it has its own stable coin. So, you've come a long way, baby. Victoria Jones, what do you think about PayPal, their ability to freeze and wipe, and their new stable coin?
Well, they seem to be beating the central banks to it, don't they? I mean, essentially they've created, they're doing exactly what the central banks are trying to do, which is having their own central bank digital currency. And, the talk I gave recently emphasized the fact that, ultimately what these entities are trying to do is overcome some of the inefficiencies that happen behind the scenes, because they do exist. I mean, our existing financial system is notoriously inefficient and expensive, and certainly something like a digital currency has the opportunity to overcome that. But of course, the huge danger with anything like this is, backdoor, the ability to wipe it, the ability to constrain transactions. There are all sorts of things that you can introduce when you have any kind of central entity introducing their own stablecoin, whether it's PayPal, whether it's Apple, whether it's Facebook, whether or not it's the Bank of England or FedNow. So, it's all much of a muchness, really. They're all kind of doing the same thing. But they leave us with the same problems with our traditional fiat currency that we are trying to overcome with Bitcoin. So I don't think it's going to overcome the fact that, a lot of these fiat currencies are being overproduced. In fact, it probably exacerbates the problem, because, who's to say that you couldn't create a digital token? Is it actually backed by? Is it actually backed by British pounds or US dollars? Where's the paper trail to account for that? I mean, it's like a number of these companies are like, well, we're going to create this stable coin, and it's backed by a certain amount of US dollars in the bank. But it's like all the central banks when they started with fractional reserve banking. What's to stop some of these companies to use fractional reserve tokenization? And it just kind of creates more fiat and gives us more of the same problem. But the thing is, I think the more of these companies that do it, the more people will start to figure it out. And it may well be that they use some of these stable coins for their day-to-day transactions, a little bit like some people, keep their day-to-day savings still in the bank, but then they have most of their savings in Bitcoin. And I think we'll just watch it all play out.
Well, that's what I find the most distressing about this is it's just locked to the dollar. So if it works properly, you won't make any profit. If you get there on day one and you're early to the PayPal coin, you're just the same as if you get there on day 90 or day 500. So there is no profit to be had here. It will not go up in value if it works properly. And if it doesn't work properly, it'll go down in value.
A lot of profit for PayPal though, potentially. Was it Tether that had 800 million profit in the first quarter, which was, in fact, it might be, surely wasn't it? It was in the billions, wasn't it? It was in the billions. So this is a huge thing for PayPal, especially to implement this with their existing ledger, as it were. Like, they're going to save a lot of money. They can also pass on that money, the savings, to some of the merchants and reduce that from 4%. So there's a lot of benefits for PayPal. But yeah, in terms of holding the dollar, you're just going to watch it depreciate. Stables seem to be only good for holding really short term while you're deciding when to buy Bitcoin next.
And there are always stables that are linked up to these fiat currencies where they're constantly printing more and devaluating it. So it is kind of stable losses, like you said, Dan. It's not linked to anything limited like gold or Bitcoin. It's linked to an unlimited tokens, such as the fiat currency. For the exit question, let's move back to the headline of the article. Which is better, the PayPal stablecoin, which barely moved the market at all, or a Bitcoin ETF? Dan Eve.
Oh, interesting take, right? Because they're saying that PayPal accepting Bitcoin was the catalyst really for the 2020 bull run, which I don't quite agree with. I think that maybe contributed slightly towards it. But they make a good point in the article that there's still a lot of constraints around buying Bitcoin in an ETF, and while that will have a positive impact on the Bitcoin market to a certain extent, because they're buying spots, so they're buying the actual Bitcoin. PayPal, that's going to be limited to these institutions anyway. So the general public is going to benefit a lot more. So I'm actually going with, as much as I've hated PayPal for freezing my account with eBay in the day and really stitching me up, I think it can get a lot more on board, a lot more general people into cryptocurrency, into Bitcoin. So yeah, I think PayPal's the better one than the ETF.
Victoria Jones, PayPal coin or the ETF?
Oh, I think they're both a bit meh. I'm not impressed with either of them. I mean, the thing is, most people who use the PayPal stablecoin, I don't think they'll know any different compared to using, their normal dollars. Most people aren't really thinking in terms of how the technology is working to know even what the difference is. It's just like, this guy wants to be paid and apparently this works, so it'll work. And even less people are aware of the Bitcoin ETF. And most people who are interested in that are the big institutions. And I think, the ETF has all sorts of issues associated with it. So, I'm going to go with neither. That's my vote.
Well, I'm going to stick with the ETF, although I am very tired of ETFs, having talked about them for seemingly 8 years, maybe 10 years now. We thought it'd be a piece of cake in the beginning, let these stock market people, retirement account people invest their money into Bitcoin with an ETF. It's taken a lot longer. What I do like about the PayPal coin, like Dan said, they have this existing user base. I think it's around 600 million users, and they're now incentivized to advertise to them to use this stable coin. So if they do use it in remittances, if they send it around, if they put some of their savings into the stable coin instead of their, PayPal savings account or something like that, it just seems like it might get a lot of use the more and more they advertise it. And the more and more they advertise it, the more and more they'll get fees. So PayPal is incentivized to get people to use this, whereas the ETF, depending on who it is, they might need a whole new customer base. They might never even reach these retirement people that I talk about. Like Victoria says, they might just go to the institutions. But we're going to talk about more about in ETFs in issue 2, Bitcoin ETF rumors. While the PayPal news didn't move the market at all, this tweet and other information about the BlackRock ETF caused the market to jump 4 to 5% before going right back down. As it says here, Galaxy CEO Mike Novogratz on the earnings call this morning said, it's a big, big deal because both our contracts on the Invesco side and the BlackRock side get you to think this is a question of when, not if, that the outside window is probably 6 months. 6 months. And so if you're kind of in a 4 to 6 months window, if you had to pin the tail on the donkey audit, that's right. The insider, the smart money, says that the BlackRock ETF will be approved. And if that's true, they're going to start buying the Bitcoin, the underlying asset, now. You always wonder when the time to buy is. It's when the smart money is buying. Victoria Jones, what do you think about the news that the BlackRock ETF is almost a shoo-in? When, not if.
Well, when I was looking at this tweet, I always like to have a brief look at the comments and see what some smart people have to say in response. And there was a great one by Euphoric Bob who said, people are only willing to make large allocations into a decentralized financial system if they can go through a centralized financial system. What are they betting on exactly then? The fundamental value of crypto, or that the price will go up? Which I think, was a very pertinent comment. I personally think I do not know why everyone's getting so excited about it. I mean, I've heard Michael Saylor talk about how it's great for getting institutions on board. But the thing is, the way in which most of these institutions are set up are completely corrupt. And that's partly what's contributing to the corruption of our financial system. So, all you're trying to do is exacerbate what's already happening and make it worse. And you're going to have one of two effects. Either they're going to use the ETF to suppress the price, or the other thing they're going to do is make it skyrocket unsustainably so that you get a load of people to buy it when it's too high, and then the price will crash. So, you may well have another, 2017 scenario when, the price rocketed, which might sound great, but most people don't sell when you get to the top because everyone's in that, oh my God, it's doing so well, it's going to go up forever. The only people who are going to sell at the top are going to be the smart money, like the institutions. And so, if they're starting to get in, it may well be that they want to play the roller coaster, but that will mean the average person is likely to lose out. And at the end of the day, we support Bitcoin, most of us, because it's meant to fix the financial system and make it better. Whereas all the ETF is going to do is make the money system even more corrupt and possibly create problems with this one asset that we think could solve the problem. So, from a philosophical perspective, I'm actually quite disturbed by it. And I suspect it probably will go through, but I think if it does, the difference with an ETF, unlike a gold or silver ETF, with a gold or silver ETF, you can't actually take the gold or silver back into your own possession. The difference with Bitcoin is that you can take it into your own possession. And so it may well be that this is the one occasion where the institutions think that they've got hold of the game, but actually it ends up creating a knock-on effect that could be very interesting. So I'm watching with great interest to see how it will play out.
They may be fair weather friends, but they're fair weather friends with hundreds of millions of dollars that they could invest into Bitcoin. Dan, Eve, what do you think about the when, not if BlackRock ETF?
Well, it does seem a bit like hearsay. I mean, obviously it's Novogratz and he's rubbing shoulders with giants and all that, but it kind of sounds like he went, oh yeah, it's a mate of a mate told me X, Y, and Z, rather than it being rubber stamped and all that. So I mean, at the end of the day, BlackRock's rejection rate is really low. It's like, the acceptance rate is 98% or something insane like that for ETFs to be approved. So, and with not just BlackRock diving in, obviously you've got Grayscale have still got like an ongoing court case against the SEC. There's multiple spot ETF requests out there. So there comes a point, right, where the SEC, if all these biggest institutions in the world are all begging for a spot ETF, they're going to pay a lot more attention than if it's a traditional crypto only company like Gemini or Grayscale, etc. So I do think it's when rather than if, but I think that's more because it's just obvious, not because Novogratz's mate said. It just seems pretty obvious based on the success rate of BlackRock in the past. But sorry, just in apparently, it was yesterday actually. And sorry to go back to PayPal because we talk about ETFs a lot, right? But PayPal have also announced that they're going to offer interest rewards for Bitcoin and crypto deposits, which sounds interesting and begs the fair old question of where they're going to get the yield from. Where are you going to get the yield for Bitcoin? What are you going to do with it? Where's that Bitcoin going to go, eh? So this could just be PayPal could end up in the realms of BlockFi and Celsius and all these other lending companies if they don't have a much more stringent risk process. But the last thing as well on PayPal, isn't it amazing how full circle, right? PayPal, when you think about how PayPal became so successful, they took the ability to send, this annoying sort code and account number and IBAN number and all these numbers you have to do and having to make sure that you get them right, otherwise you lose your money. And they converted that into the ability to just send money to an email address. Now they're going back to the other way and now they're going to be using big strings starting with 0x to send money around. So it's amazing how that usability thing that made PayPal so popular is now going in reverse. And but I think it's going to be very, very popular.
It will be interesting to see what PayPal does and what the ETF does. But now to the exit question. Will the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF be approved in 6 months, 1 year, or never? Victoria Jones.
I'll go with 1 year. I think if they're going to do it at all, they'll drag it out as long as possible.
1 year, just a little after the halving. Dan, Eve, 6 months, 1 year, or never?
Sooner the better for me. I think sooner the better. The reason why, especially 6 months over 1 year, because in 6 months it's just before the halvening. And when the ETF, the futures ETF, got approved in 2017, that basically was the top, right? Within a few days of that ETF being approved, end of 2017, that was the top. And we've seen with gold, when the gold ETF was approved back in years and years ago, that kind of was the top of the cycle. So if it's sooner rather than later, then I think that's much better for Bitcoin's bull run cycle after the halvening.
I like Dan's everything all at once plan, the ETF, the halvening, the all-time high. Let's do it all next year in 6 months. 6 months. Check out worldcryptonetwork.com. We've got 3,067 videos, including the new Bitcoin group, a proof of work episode with Thomas from Electrum Wallet, Peter Todd, and Vlad Costa, and more at worldcryptonetwork.com. Moving on to issue 3, Bitcoin miner Riot made millions from credits during heat wave. Yes, that's right. Riot is one of the world's largest Bitcoin sites in Texas, and they made $13.5 million in power credits. They were paid for not mining. Obviously, the state of Texas is very upset about this. Their plan to balance the power system using Bitcoin miners seems like a disaster, as the Bitcoin miners have run away with the money, and now, just like the farmers in the United States, are getting paid not to mine. Dan, Eve, what do you think about the incredible ability of Riot miners to get paid not to work?
Well, I mean, like the parts of the feedback of the response about Riot miners being paid for downtime is that they're being paid by the electric grid. Well, yeah, that's in their contract. The electric grid signed it. It's not like they've got one over on the grid, and everyone's losing out on power and stuff like that. This was contractually agreed because they've quite happily decided to scale down. It seems like that would have dented their profits as well, because it said in the first quarter they made 27 million or something from the mining, and then 13 million from the electricity downtime. Even though we've been in a kind of bit of a downtrend for the first quarter in terms of Bitcoin price, and we're only just floating around the 30k in Q2. But at the end of the day, they're a business that pays for their power. So I don't know when we got at what point, and maybe it's just Bitcoin, that we got into this thing of like discriminating against businesses because we don't agree with why they're using power, because there's hundreds of businesses that I think are just completely and things that people do with their electricity that just I don't think is completely pointless. But I'm not going to go and moan and say that you're not allowed to do that with your electricity. So yeah, it's just a strange thing, right? At the end of the day, they've got a deal. They power down so that the grid doesn't suffer. People should be commending them for that rather than harping on about them being paid by the electric grid, because this is how things work. This is also why it demonstrates why the sort of relationship that excess energy has, right, with the Bitcoin using excess energy and excess renewables from hydro plants, etc., because they have downtime organized where they don't use the electricity in times that it's needed, and then in the other times they use the excess electricity. So I think it's a good deal for both of the participants, actually, because it means that all the electricity that's being produced is being used. So whilst they were being paid, right, by the Texas board or whatever, they're being paid this 13.7 million. If the mining operation wasn't there at all, they would have not paid millions and millions and millions to run the Bitcoin mining farm. So, you know, people forget about that. There's money that it's not a one-way thing, that the board, like people mine Bitcoin and they just take money from the grid and that's it. Like the money goes back the other way. That's how the grid can afford to pay the money back. Like it's it's not rocket science. But obviously people are going to complain as long as Bitcoin uses energy, which is going to be forever, then people will complain and moan about it and draw these ridiculous straw man arguments about you know, Bitcoin energy usage. So I say stone.
Paying people not to work sounds like Ayn Rand. I also didn't mine any Bitcoin in Texas. Can I have my 13.5 million? Victoria Jones, what do you think about this bad deal that Texas signed with Riot Mine?
Well, I think, you know, Riot miners are quids in, aren't they? I mean, it's nice work if you can get it. So yeah, I mean, fair enough. You know, they clearly understand their business model better than Texas does, and they made the most of it and made sure they set up a situation where their business wouldn't go under. So good for them. Good for them. And Texas, do your homework next time.
If only they could have stretched an extension cord to Oklahoma, and then they could have just switched over to the other state's power, getting the Texas money and still getting to mine. But yes, I think it was a bad deal by Texas, and it's unlikely. Like, it's going to be hot there, right? It's global warming. It's going to be hot all the time. If this deal continues, I think Riot will continue to make money. Exit question: will Texas wiggle out of the deal? Will they try not to pay Riot, or will they try to cancel the deal in the future? Dan Eve.
Well, I suppose it all really depends on how much money's flowing the other way. If the mining company is providing a steady income for Texas, then the 13.7 million or whatever it was that they had to pay them back in the downtime might just be a drop in the ocean. It costs a lot to mine Bitcoin. It's power intensive. That's the whole point of the whole thing. So they will be paying a lot in electricity fees. At the end of the day, if it's not profitable for Texas, you know, the power grid, then they're gonna want to change the deal or break contract or whatever. I'm sure there's some sort of get out clause. But the real question is going to come when there's a bull run and Riot have to make that awkward decision of like, do we not power down our miners because Bitcoin's suddenly like 150k or something crazy like that? That's going to be the real, or maybe they just in preparation for that they do what you've said and just like, you know, grab a power line from Oklahoma, or what would be sensible actually, and I don't know if they've done any of this, or any mining companies have done this, is look at how to store electricity themselves for downtime, right? Because if you can be paying for your electricity but also storing it in some way that's kind of quite efficient, you know, even doing the whole kind of uphill lake thing that pours, you know, you pump water uphill and then it comes down, something crazy like that, then it means that they're covered for the downtime because they have some electricity being produced even when they're having to sell it back to the board. So that kind of hedges against electricity downtime when there's a pump.
Well, and remember, the Texas energy grid is unique, and that is to say terrible, in that it is not connected to any of the other 50 states. So if Texas needs more power or if Texas has excess power, there's nothing they can do with it. So it's likely they'll need this kind of deal with Riot or someone else in the future to attempt to balance their really odd separate energy grid. Victoria Jones, what do you think? Will Texas try to change the deal? Do you think Riot will get all the money?
Oh, I think they'd be silly not to, wouldn't they, really? I mean, I think it's the way of the world. When you realize you've got a bad deal, you have to renegotiate. Not sure how they'll wiggle out of the contract that they've got, because Riot have obviously got a good deal, but you know, precedent says that it'll probably be negotiated at some point if they need to. So, you know.
Well, and we did discuss it on this group right here, and I told Texas it was a bad idea and they would come to regret it. They look so bad for paying people not to work. No one's ever going to understand that on the other end, they might need the miners to turn it up to, keep their energy grid stable. But this idea that they're paying them not to work because it's too hot in the summer is ridiculous. We all know it's going to be too hot in the summer. We all know that they were going to get this sweet, sweet money. It seems only the state of Texas was in denial here. Moving on to issue 4. Issue 4, relying on remittances and left unbanked. The Philippines needs Bitcoin's Lightning Network. Other cryptocurrencies have taken off in the Philippines, including the play-to-earn games like Axie Infinity and even the NFTs during the NFT explosion. And now they're saying that major cryptocurrencies are integrating the Bitcoin Lightning Network, and it's time for merchants in the Philippines to do likewise. The Philippines is one of the most heavily reliant on remittances, that is, people sending money home to the Philippines. They could do so cheaper and more efficiently with the Lightning Network. We've talked about the decline of Western Union and the rise of Bitcoin and Lightning for years and years and years, and now it might actually happen. Victoria Jones, what do you think about the possibilities of Bitcoin, the Philippines, and the Lightning Network?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think this is what Bitcoin's been created for, really, isn't it? The unbanked, and the sooner you can get the Lightning Network operational, the more it can be used in the economy for what it was designed for, as a peer-to-peer cash system. So yeah, and I think you've got a lot of hard workers in these third world countries who've been denied a lot of privileges for a long time, and so they're going to be hardworking and industrious because they'll be highly motivated. I think people in the West maybe less so because they've been privileged for longer, so they don't, there's not as much for them to work for. So yeah, I think as the infrastructure gets rolled out, it's highly motivating for people to use it and use it in their businesses. And once they understand its value, I've always maintained that it'll be the business owners insisting that they only want to be paid in Bitcoin that will really start to drive adoption. So yeah, this is what we predicted, and it's what's happening. Good for them.
Dan, Eve, will we finally have a crypto country, not just a beach and a dictator?
Well, I think it's, at the end of the day, international remittances was a big driver in sort of one of the reasons why I thought Bitcoin was so cool. Like back when I heard about it in 2013, is that there was all these charges for sending money, and I've got family abroad and stuff, and just sending anything abroad was just so expensive, and it still is now to a certain extent. There's some good banks that kind of offer less fees than others, but it's still pretty poor, and I'd still rather be using Bitcoin, which the fee to send 100 grand is still the same roughly as if it's one UTXO, right? It's the same to send £10, but at the end of the day, it's much better solution than going via bank and it taking a long time and having all sorts of other issues. So if Lightning is going to help scale that solution, then why not? It's a very usable solution. Obviously I'm quite lazy, so I use Wallet of Satoshi, but it's just such a simple thing to do. Get given a QR code, you scan it, and then that's the money sent. So for Philippines, there was like 38 billion, I think it said, something like that, of international remittance. There's a lot of Filipinos that work, in the UK. Lots of actually the health system, for example, and everyone needs to send money internationally. So using Bitcoin is going to be cheaper for them ultimately. The only downside is, of course, that and using Lightning is going to be even cheaper than that. The only downside, of course, is that they need, on the other side, they need an on-ramp and an off-ramp, right? So it's all good being able to send someone in the Philippines, in a village in the Philippines, some 100,000 sats, for example. But they need somewhere to convert that 100,000 sats. Either a business needs to accept Lightning, or they need to be able to convert it into money, which will probably end up being converted into the dollar or something crazy like that. But it needs those on ramps and off ramps. So, like Victoria's saying, what's really going to drive it is when businesses start accepting it, and these localized businesses accepting it. So, yeah, at the end of the day, it's a much better solution than using the traditional banking system. And if you can save a few pounds here and there on using Lightning versus using mainnet, then why not do it? Especially with micropayments. And one of the things that that I was reading the other day was because of the way UTXOs work on Bitcoin. It's and the price of Bitcoin, people that have dollar cost averaged with all these different low cost dollar cost average of low Bitcoin values can be in a bit of a trap, because the fees to spend from all these UTXOs could end up being quite high, and almost the value of the transaction itself to spend that UTXO. So Lightning solves that problem as well. It makes it a lot easier to stack sats, especially at a lower value if you're doing sort of £5 here and there. So all for it. I'm all for it. That was
well, as Andreas always said, it's about the unbanked. And it's not about you in the West. You have MasterCard and Visa. Your banks are pretty standard. Your dollar's pretty stable. We have no idea what real currency problems are about. But people sending their paycheck home with Western Union, losing amounts to fees, people with an uncertain currency driven up and downwards, that's who it's really about. So it's exciting to see it's finally reaching out to the Philippines, a large country, heavily using remittances. Would be perfect for the Lightning Network. As the article says, they just need the other side. They need the businesses to start to accept it. They need that kind of Bitcoin beach energy. We'll see if they can find it. We'll also see if they can recover from the play to earn games. As I mentioned earlier, Axie Infinity, the NFT boom was very big in the Philippines. And unfortunately, as we all know, that thing went up and then it went down. So you can only hope they weren't burned too much by the down, that they would ignore the Lightning Network. As we've said before, if you're paying 30% to send money home and you could pay less than 1% instead, you're obviously going to start paying less than 1%, assuming that your relatives you're sending the money to can cash it out. So they really do. It's a chicken and an egg problem. They need both sides to work at the same time so that they could adopt the Lightning Network. Let's move on to issue 5, bonus issue. Bitcoin price drops to 29.4K as another rally is quickly snuffed out. Selling emerged ahead of U.S. inflation data for July set to be released Thursday morning. We've also seen the stock market, the Dow Jones Industrial Average down 400 to 500 points. Not a lot of confidence there, but the Bitcoin price just can't seem to get over $30,000. Dan, Eve, what's wrong with Bitcoin? Why can't it go up more? We've had PayPal stablecoin, BlackRock ETF, when, not if, and still 29K, 29K, 29K.
Bitcoin is the new stablecoin, right? But isn't that one of the things that with Bitcoin, I'm sure I read recently, or maybe it was like a year ago, but I'm sure it still stands relatively true, that Bitcoin is becoming actually less and less volatile, right? On that volatility index that as time goes on, because there's a lot more plump order books, right? One of the things about volatility is that, especially if you've got thin order books, it's easy for the price to pump and dump really, really easily. Whereas when those order books become a lot more thick and plump and voluminous, it becomes a lot harder for the price to move insane amounts. Which is why we haven't seen, in years now. So sad, pumping 60-70% in a day. Oh, I miss those days. I miss those Bitcoin days. So yeah, the volatility is moving, right? It's becoming almost, let's face it, it's becoming almost as like boring as watching a stock now, isn't it? It's like a couple of percent a day, oh, a couple of percent, yeah, or compound couple of percent, lovely. But no, you want to see it like just absolutely hoon it to like, 50K in a very short space of time. But those days are gone, it seems. Maybe not until the halvening comes in, right? So we're sort of around this 30K level, and it breaks it, and then suddenly you see all these articles saying it broke through the 30K wall, which is just a number, right? An arbitrary number. I mean, probably there are some people that might have sell orders out there that trigger at 30K, but at the end of the day, 30K is the same as 31, which is the same as 29. And it's all of these other external factors that are going to influence combined, that are going to influence whether people make that decision to buy and sell Bitcoin. The good thing is, though, it seems like the as the years go on, there is less of a chance for manipulation to happen, because it takes a lot more money to swing Bitcoin's price in a manipulative way. And a lot more exchanges, right? Back in the day when it was like 5 exchanges you could really buy Bitcoin on, it was a lot easier for whales to manipulate price and bish bash bosh. Whereas now, you'd have to synchronously do sell orders in loads of exchanges, and it would be a lot more money to actually pull those sell orders off. And the more that time goes on, the more that's going to happen. But the cool thing is that isn't there like the least Bitcoin on exchanges relative to the supply in a long while, like 5-year lows or something crazy like that, I read. So that's all contributing, right? There's even though there's less actual Bitcoin on these exchanges, the value of that Bitcoin is a lot, and therefore it's becoming a lot harder to be able to manipulate the Bitcoin price. So I'm quite happy floating around 30K until, as long as it doesn't really drop. That'd be nice to sort of float around 30K until the halvening, and then to the moon.
They always say the volatility's gone and then it returns. Victoria Jones, I'm going to set you up. Do you think that the ETFs are keeping the price low? The big smart money secretly filling up their bags full of Bitcoin as the rest of us give up because the price won't move above 30K?
No, not really. I mean, if you look back in the past at Bitcoin's price history, it's doing what it normally does. And at this stage in the price cycle, it tends to be pretty flat for a while. I mean, if you look back at 2015, especially, it's very much following that pattern. Unlike 2019, where it kind of had a big pop in the price. And I think that was partly because someone set up a Bitcoin-based Ponzi scheme somewhere obscure, which is what caused it to fluctuate like that. But if it hadn't been for that, it probably would have followed the pattern of 2015, which meant that it was flat for almost 2 years before it was then the halving, and then it took off again. And so, if it's following the pattern of 2015, we haven't had this big pop and then it crashed down again. If it's just steady, we're building a very solid base, I think, for when we have the halvening and then it takes off again. So I think it's a promising sign. I don't think the ETF's got anything to do with it.
No one wants a solid base. We want excitement. We want it to go up, up, up all the time.
Oh, you get that next year, I think. This time next year, watch out.
This time next year. Dan, Eve, more importantly, this time next week, will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower? You muted to unmute. So close.
Dear. There we go. Silly sausage. Last year I said up, and I was correct by 0.48%, which is very, very rare, because I'm definitely not an indicator you want to follow. But I think we're going to go up again. I think there's going to be there's going to be some good news coming out about more rumors of ETFs and all that, which is going to plump the markets. Not that the ETFs are amazing or anything, but that's going to get some retail investors excited, I think.
The Mad Tour is continuing. Victoria, will it go higher or lower next week?
Oh, I think the pop has just started. I think it'll recover and give us a little bit more drama by next week.
And we have a bonus. We have our online Magic 8 Ball, who last week told you to concentrate and ask again later. It's been only a few days, but here it is. Time to ask again. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? Oh, it went away. And without a doubt, the magic 8 ball says it will be higher. There it is. There's your proof. Not investment advice. It's a magic 8 ball. We're running out of time. Dan, Eve, do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
Sorry, there was a dog's barking, so I had to mute. My prediction or story of the week. Oh shoot, I'm always underprepared. Wait, Victoria, could you go first? Because I'm stumped. I need a little more time.
Oh, no problem. Well, my story of the week is I'm working on the next article for my website, and the topic is going to be Bitcoin and the South Sea Bubble, which would be an interesting topic. So that means that my current newsletter, which is Bitcoin and the Gold Standard, will be behind a paywall after Sunday. So, you've been given fair notice. Check it out now if you want to see it. Otherwise, you'll be paying me 500 sats next time you want to read it. So there you go.
I love that graphic of the South Seas bubble. Newton invests a little, his friends become rich. Newton invests more, the downturn, his friends exit. Newton is broken forever. Oh, it's awful. And I've felt it many times as I try to get into something after it's passed, like the AMC stocks or the other meme stocks. It moves so quickly. You have to have the correct timing, not just average timing. All right, Dan, have you got a story of the week?
My story of the week is not okay. It's not a story of the week. It's a prediction. There you go. Curveball. I am intending to finish the new rap that I wrote by and kind of put a video to it by next, not by the next show, that would be next Thursday, but by the end of the next weekend. So yeah, I'm gonna finally finish it. Pies and all sorts around here. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. So hopefully I will finish that soon.
My story of the week, I've been laying low in Germany, but it's time to go traveling again in about a week. I'm going to go to Berlin and then Amsterdam and then London, and then I'm going to go home. So, kind of familiar places. It's fun to go places I've already been. There's not as much pressure to see the great museums as I've already seen them. So, maybe I can see some minor museums in Berlin, relax in Amsterdam, do some bike riding, maybe try to find some paths I haven't been on, which is going to be tough. I was awarded the 50-mile patch for riding 50 miles in Amsterdam on my bike, and it would be great to top that, even though I'm only there a week. And then in London, I hope to see The Lion King and Book of Mormon a second time, which I think will go really well together. As when I was watching Book of Mormon the first time, I was like, they really hate The Lion King. They are really making fun of this thing. And then I just read this book, Disney War, and it talked about how Disney was just so thrilled with The Lion King and all the work that they put into it, and how they transitioned some of their films like Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King into very successful musicals. So I would like to see that, the costumes and all that kind of thing. So, as well as the British Museum and maybe some other things in London. So travel continues here on the Mad Tour. We're a day early this week. We'll be a day early next week. So thanks to joining us on this special Thursday time, allowing us to have some of our Fridays free while we are traveling. So be sure to give us a thumbs up down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave us a comment if you're watching this later on. Hello to the live chat. And until next time, bye.